that the history of philosophy in the Philippines begins with the documents of the Manila Synod. These documents were transcribed, and that transcription was published in the late 80s, 86 or 87. And that's what it gave me. That's what I started translating. And once I started translating it, I said, wow, this is the worst catalog you could find of the sins of the Spaniards. No? All the possible abuses done to Filipinos, they're all here because it's a handbook for confessors, which means that it lists the abuses that Spaniards had committed against Filipinos, and would specify if these were mortal sins or not. And then also they would specify if restitution was necessary and who was to do the restitution.
Dr. Dumol was one of the speakers of a Philippine Studies Conference which I attended. And after his lecture, I approached him to see whether he had plans of presenting his findings in a longer work, like a publication.
When Maricor first approached me with a book, I was thinking, another really long, boring church document, oh my God. And then she told me it had 3 sets of footnotes. And then ano to? Anong meron dito? Bakit 3 yung footnotes niya? So she kind of told me about it, and it got me interested.
Dr. Dumol's manuscript was particularly tricky because it had more than 1 set of footnotes. And I thought that it had to be someone like Karl, who will be up to the challenge of layouting such a manuscript.
I sent him my manuscript, and that manuscript would have already had a primitive version of the design which you find here. Now, what I mean by primitive version is that the book is not a simple one of just a series of chapters, because it turned out that the documents which I translated were in fact 2 versions of each other, one longer than the other, both in a damaged state.
It wasn't easy reading the manuscript because it wasn't in the form that you see it today. It was in a Word document, and there were 3 sets of footnotes, so like half the page would be just footnotes.
Now, in the process of translating it, I also found out, especially in particular for the second draft, that there were all sorts of texts introduced into it which were not originally part of it. I examined them and I saw that they must have been marginal notes in the manuscript which later scribes had inserted into the text, thinking that they were marginal notes intended by the editors for insertion, which is not the case at all. No? And so translation became the chore.
And when I was reading the manuscript, it really was interesting. It wasn't actually a boring church document. It was an interesting it was an interesting rundown of all the inequities that the Spanish colonial government inflicted on the Filipinos, and how the clergy were trying to react to it. And parang you kind of sense that there was this very interesting contradiction, complicated contradiction, because the church was also part of the Spanish state, but they were also trying to, there was a segment of it genuinely trying to prevent these abuses being inflicted on the Filipino people. Mm-hmm. So,
well, that's what I mean by saying that this is not a simple book at all. Aside from which it's got It's got appendices, which are a little bit odd, but they go through all of the the footnotes that appear here in two versions, the Spanish and the English. And actually, you know, the challenge with something like this is how to present it in a way that would make the reader stop.
My experience with looking at the original manuscript in the Word document was it's so hard to distinguish what is what, which is which. So here I had to make sure that at a glance you know what you're looking at. You know that what you're looking at is the original text, a historical footnote, a contemporary footnote. And I knew as well that this kind of book has a very limited audience. So I had to make sure that the book would be readable to a senior citizen.
Yung Manila Synod, just like yung iba pang mga projects, parang gagawin ni Karl yung template, tapos he will ask me to place the text. Ganyan. So, susundan ko lang din yung layout niya. Ayun, tapos siya din yung mag-aayos. So, basically, yun yung ginawa ko din sa Synod. Kaya lang, komplikado nga siya kasi 3 yung sets ng footnotes.
The footnotes were manually inputted, and every little change would have to be, for example, if you inserted a footnote at number 26, the rest of the footnotes would have to be renumbered, and there are 3 sets of them. So I had to entrust the manuscript to Jane, and she did a very good job at it.
Ang footnotes ng libro ay, yung actual footnotes ng text ay parang 4 na beses na umulit yung letters. So, that's 26 times 4. So, more or less, almost 100 na footnotes. Tapos, yung translation, dahil translation yung Synod, yung translation itself, meron siyang marginal notes. Tapos, yung footnotes na translate ay meron din siyang marginal notes. So, siguro more or less mga 200 plus na footnotes meron yung buong text kasama yung marginal notes.
It took 3 years from 2012 to 2014. It went back and forth in the process of production, from layout, relayout, proofreading, checking, adjustments, and so on. And I even received more than 30 emails from the author regarding corrections, aside from the complete page proofs in 3 or 4 batches. So it's complicated. Adding to that is the layout. It has 3 notes within a page. There's a kind of note in the corner of the book, upper corner, and then lower corner, and then below the text. So when you correct, it will affect even the notes and the layout.
We're a small team, and then there are only a few opportunities to check and balance each other. There's me and Jane, there's Ateneo, there's the author, there's Maricor. And I think we really tried our best to make sure that the footnotes were all in order and everything was okay.
Nung na-layout na siya, di sinubmit dun sa author, tapos meron siyang mga corrections. Ibabalik niya sa akin, no? Ibabalik niya kay La Mistina, tapos ipapasa sa akin. Siguro nakailang beses yun na ganun eh. Nakailang drafts kami bago siya talaga na-finalize.
Once I was given the drafts, then I could look at it with a fresh eye, which is always dangerous because it means that you see things you did not see before. And it meant that I saw texts which I should extract and make into footnotes, and vice versa. Maybe footnotes much less that I should return to the main text. But whenever you do that, everything moves, all the numbers, all the letters. So I recall whenever I'd make one change, I would go manually through all the numbers using the computer to change them. And then another change. Again, through the whole process. After a while, I sort of memorized the pattern of where the... No? That's on my end. And I was really very embarrassed sending drafts to the editor, thinking that she must be ready to curse me.
Even just one correction on one page will mean a whole run of the correcting process itself. But I think all the trouble has been worth it.
Finally, the layout is done, and we just have to send it to press. Then we went to the tricky matter of how should this thing look? What paper should we print it on? So I said to Ate Tina, basta yung papel hindi puti. Kailangan yung cream. Kung pwede yung cream that we usually go for. So here we go. A very nice paper. I like the paper that they use because it's very lightweight. It's not a terribly heavy thing to bring about. And then it has a nice tactile feel to it. The most amusing part was the cover.
They asked me, Tina, are you sure it's craft paper? That's what the artist told me. Yung craft paper, Tina, it's only for folders, envelopes, and paper bag. So, paano yan? Sige, I'll just ask again, Karl. And then I asked Karl, tama, Ate Tina, it's craft paper.
And she was like, talaga? And then, so she said, hingi na lang po kayo ng sample sa printer. So she showed me ganyan. And she said, she raised some concerns like, won't it look bad or won't it look terrible?
Pero masyadong malambot yun. You look for a harder type of craft paper. So, when I put down the phone, sabi ko, ano ba daw si Karl? Parang, ano kaya naisip nito? Parang imposible yata. So, pero kailangan kong sundin kasi artist siya eh. He knows the design, pati yung lalabas nun. Pero, worried pa rin ako. Sabi ko, paano kaya to?
Ate Tina, parang, it's a draft. So, it has to not look too precious. And it has to have a feel of the old. And then I'd balance it with, like, it's just one color. It's just black. But, so it would be cheaper. I mean, if there would be costs incurred by some element of the book, we'd scrimp on some others. So it would be just black. But it won't look cheap because the calligraphy is so nice.
So, binalik ko ulit dun sa printer. O sige Tina, kung that's what you really want, we will use craft paper. Tapos meron ding blind embossed. Hindi pa nga masyadong lumabas kasi the craft paper used was medyo yung magaang siya, soft pa siya. So, sige na lang. Pero I was still nervous. What will be the outcome of this?
Quite impressive, I would say, because of the show of calligraphy. Yeah, look at that flourish there. In an essay I wrote on this, I said, I don't know why Karl put so much importance to the date.
And I'm really fortunate that the Ateneo lets me get away with these things. Because normally, working with other presses, you just work with their parameters. It has to be a book, it has to be 6x9, it has to be this color. But here they allow me a little more freedom with the format. So there. And then, even until the last minute when the book was already out, and I was like very happy with it, but I was kind of disappointed with the very, very subtle emboss. But I was still overall happy with it. Ate Tina was Like, she was even like telling me, oh ano, ang daming napitikin ng libro mo, pero yung cover, ganun ba talaga? Parang, she still had doubts about the cover. And even when I told her that, oh, Ate Rina, nanalo tayo ng book awards, and she's like, talaga, yung cover na yun. And so, that was kind of fun.
That batch, I had a very, very difficult time choosing because it's not just me who choose. It's the panel. Without saying their names or the selection process. So essentially, we long list. Well, on my part, I long list. I have a long list, which I have to review, and the books were with me like for more than a month, or I think 2 months. So I have all the time to really look at it, enjoy the feel, read, and can I mention the other? Can I mention the other books?
Yes.
Okay. There was one photography book. It's like an accordion. And I think it's a very, very clever book done by, I forgot the name of the photographer, Meryl Soriano, her name, about London. And, okay, so I like this. It's not very Filipino, but it's done by a Filipino photographer. Subject is London. So I said, like we're getting there. Like a Filipino doing a subject which is not Filipiniana. And the photography is, it's fantastic. And then there's another book. It's actually, it's more like an exhibition catalog, but it's well designed. It's by Wawi Nabarosa. Photographer also, and like when I was looking at the book, wow, I mean, but then again, at the end of the day, what's the purpose? Design's not just being pretty and being beautiful. I'm not saying that there's no weight or gravitas like the books I mentioned. I mean, they are indeed very, very well thought of, well designed. And then there's a book on climate change. Very nice photography. My favorite format, square format, because it's really difficult to design a square format book. And of course, like you have all these like fantastic illustrations. Then finally, like under the heap, I found Karl's book.
Yun, I was not expecting it because the cover nga is different. They might look for another kind of cover. Pero in the inside pages, talaga namang the design is really professional at saka maganda talaga yung pinaghirapan mo yun.
This is a very, very difficult book to design. I mean, who would read the Manila Synod of 1582? Very few people will read it. But Paul Dumol did a very good job, and like how Karl translate everything visually, like in terms of font, in terms of the use of paper, and this is not a very easy book to design. And now, because the font is so readable, so legible, and then it has this very old feel that it's like set in metal or wood. So the font actually talks to you, and you enjoy reading it because there's a lot of empty spaces. Like when you look at other Filipino design books, it's really horror vacui, like the fear of empty space, so you have to put everything. But in his book, it's really refreshing. It's old, but it's new. And it's the paper feels old, but it's actually recycled and very new.
Surprise. Really surprised. Because I see it as a scholarly work, and therefore as something that not many people are going to read, to buy. And I was surprised that the judges decided to go through it. And I imagined that they must have read everything. So I was also pleased.
I chose it over the other books. I mean, we're not even friends on Facebook or knew him. So, in fact, it's my chance to to revenge because he won in 2008 for I lost in culinary. I was like, parang, this is my revenge. I'll let somebody else win. But no, I mean, I'm not like that. I'm not that kind of a person. So, so congratulations to Carl. I mean, he really deserves that.
Nagtaka ako pero masaya ako. They recognize our work na masyadong mahirap, repetitive, no? Na value ko yung binigay ng National Book Award kasi they did not only look at the cover, though maganda nga, sabi nga nila classy daw yun, kahit ganon yung paper niya, tinignan din nila yung inside. So, from cover to cover.
I was actually surprised that it was nominated because normally in award shows, you pick books that are kind of extravagant, or there's a certain show-off kind of feel to the book, which is why most award-winning books are coffee table books or photography books, a lot of special printing and all that, special techniques in print. But this was a book that had not a single image in it. This was all text, and it was about a very obscure subject. And the cover was really cheap, parang ganun. So it was a pleasant surprise to me that someone took notice, or that the design was interesting enough to draw readers in, or to draw an award-giving body in and notice the book. So I was very surprised, and I was pleased.
I never met Karl until we were both there to receive our book awards. So, in fact, I don't think we ever communicated either.
I actually never talked to him directly during the process of the book. I only met him on the day that we were accepting a National Book Awards at the National Museum.
I think Carl is less interested in technique, but more in going beyond and going away from what's expected. He likes to do different things that you hardly see in other books.
The design clarifies, and I should add, before I forget it, the design also delights.
Carl didn't disappoint me and didn't disappoint Dr. Dumol.
It's really worth it because it's an important document. It's something that, even though it's from 1582, it's still very much relevant to I mean, you can learn a lot of why Filipinos are this way because of the lessons that you can glean from this document. So it was really worth the effort to put out a book that would give us a deeper understanding of who we are and where we are in this juncture in history.